everybody and welcome back. This is part 17 of our Trumpeter 1200 scale HMS Hood build. So we left the last video, part 16, building the after defence position here, and we managed to finish off the screens at the back and the rear 4-inch mounting. And at that stage, I think I said in the last video that I was going to have to go ahead and build a case or a temporary cover for the model, and I've started doing that, but that's taken up the last 3 days, so there hasn't been an awful lot of progress on the ship itself. In this video I'm going to just be doing some more of the shelter deck details, and I want to do the pom pom bandstand which sits right at the back of the ship. And with 1 or 2 other bits and pieces, I've got the HACs director to build and the searchlights to build for the after defence position that we did in part 16. So I hope I can get a bit of model building done rather than just concentrating on woodwork this week. 1 or 2 of you have asked for some information about how I build the cover, so I'll come on to that. I might post a separate video next week and keep the main videos for the actual model itself. So I'm going to press on with some of these other details and get back to the bench and get some other stuff done. So we'll start off with the HACs director for the after defence position. I've built the 2 forward ones earlier on in the series when we did the bridge base, and we're going to start off with the trumpeter parts, which is just this plastic pedestal, and we need the 4 brass brackets as well from the trumpeter brass. So they're on fret D of the trumpeter brass set. So I'll just clean those up first. Okay, so this is the aft HACs director, and it's built more or less in the same way as the 2 front ones that we did in the bridge base video quite a while back now. And I compared the Pontos resin HACs with the trumpeter parts, and they are quite different. The trumpeter HACs directors are quite a bit bigger than this and a different shape, the squarer. So if you're interested in just doing that comparison, just have a look back at that video. Apart from the resin replacements here, we've got the trumpeter pedestal and the trumpeter brass brackets that go on the bottom here. So that's ready for painting. These are the searchlight parts. We need to make 6 of these. And these are all Pontos replacements for the trumpeter parts. So we've got the base or stand, the searchlight body itself. Pontos provides some resin lenses. They're really nice crystal clear lenses. And there's 4 etched brass parts, so a base, 2 lens frames here, some cabling to run up the side of the body, and a small manoeuvring wheel, I guess it is. So we'll get these off the blocks and start to build them up. I just need to trim the casting blocks off this resin, but it cleans pretty easily. Although it is quite brittle, you can see I've broken this part off. That one's snapped. But being resin, it will repair fairly easily. It's very easy to glue together. But it is quite brittle, so you just need to be careful. Certainly more careful than I was with it. So nearly there with these searchlights, and we have to fit this ring inside, and it actually sits in a recess within the searchlight body, and because it's a circle, it's very precise. It has to be exactly perpendicular to the part to squeeze in, and if you're having difficulty with them, it's not that they won't fit, it's just that they're so precise. So there it is, sitting inside the recess of the searchlight barrel, and that's gone in dry, and I just put a dab of extra thin super glue on around the edge, and it'll just, you don't have to go all the way around, that's just enough to secure it. That's all it needs. The outer ring goes with its arms foot up and down, so we've got those, the first ring's on a diagonal, and then the second ring, the outer ring, goes up and down like that. So you just want to make sure that's vertical. And again, just put a spot of extra thin on the edge, just in one side like that, and that's enough to secure it. Let's try and get a close-up of that. I'll put them all, those last three, on the bases now. I'll just put this lens away before I lose it. I've never used clear resin before, but they're absolutely crystal clear. And then the last thing to do is to just put the wheel on, the training wheel on the back, and there's a tiny little stub here at the back that the wheel sits on. So it just goes off to the back there on the little resin spigot. Sometimes you just look in, don't you, when it you concentrate on getting these parts on, and then some of them, like that one, it falls off onto the part in exactly the right position. So it's a new day, and the first job I had to do this morning was to reverse the orientation of the searchlights that I built yesterday, because on closer inspection of the instructions I realised that I'd got the wheel on the wrong side. So it's now on the right, according to the Pontos instructions at any rate. It's quite often what I do when I've finished in the shed and go back in the house. I might do a bit of reading at night time, which isn't always a good thing, because I turn up these little bits of information that I've missed and have to go back and correct things. But I couldn't leave them as they were, and they were easy enough to correct. This resin glues easily, but it also breaks apart fairly easily as well, so we've fixed that without any real damage done. The next thing we're going to have a look at is the Pom Pom directors, and I'm going to make all three. There are two forward on the bridge that I didn't do when I built the bridge, and there's one on the after control position, which I am going to fit now. So that's why I've come round to doing all three pom-pom directors. Now in the instructions, Pontos give us two types, a Mark 1 and a Mark 2, and you can build 3 sets of each, and it marks the pom-pom directors as optional. But in fact what we had was a Mark 1 on the bridge and a Mark 2 was situated on the after defence position. So I need to build 2 Mark 1s for the bridge and a Mark 2 for the after defence position. So we'll get the parts together. One looks quite a bit simpler than the other. The Mark 1 looks simpler than the other. So we'll do the Mark 1 first. So these are the parts for the pom-pom director. Let's see if we can come in a bit on those. What's the betting that I'm going to lose that? So we've got turned brass piece here and 6 pieces of etched brass. And Pontos provide 3 sets of these, but we'll be using 2, so if I make a mess of one of them, I've got a spare. And they also provide 3 of the Mark II, so we'll only be using 1, so I've got 2 opportunities to muck up on the Mark II. Okay, so obviously I need something to hold these in while I'm working. The first piece to fit on is this one. The ring at the back folds up through 90. This little box at the side folds down through 90. And the arms at the sides go up. I'm going to adjust all these once the part's on the pedestal. And the important thing is not to be bending them backwards and forwards, so get them on the pedestal and then do any adjustments afterwards. So that isn't glued. I'll just do the next part, which is 118. So that bends through 180 degrees. I'm not going to bother gluing that. And this ring comes up. That should fit on top, which it does. And we need just a drop of super thin on that, and once the part's set up we can just do the final adjustments. This part goes on the side here, and there's a little minuscule location mark on both parts to show you where that lines up. The last thing to do is fit the sight onto the top, which you can barely see really. And that's got 2 folds on it, which I'm not going to make just now because it's handy to have the length of the part to hold it. Now that the sight is set up properly, I can bend it into the proper shape. Let's see if I can see it. It's useful for tiny little parts like this to have a black background, which is why I just use this black cloth. It just helps the brass stand out so that you can see what you're doing. So there we are, that's the second Mark 1. And at this point I can just adjust those two front arms, make sure that they're parallel and pointing in the same direction, which they are. So they're going to be primed and I'll paint them ready to fit on the bridge at a later stage. So I'll do the Mark II now. We just need one of these, and I've got 3 in the Pontos set, so I can mess 2 up. Let's try not to do that. So I'll get all the parts off first, give them a clean up, and then we'll see how it goes together. These are the parts for the Mark II. There's a couple of pieces of turned brass and 5 etched parts. So I think the first thing to do is to build up this main part of the director, this box, and just try and work out where we're going to be doing some of these bends. So I'll just put the top part to one side for a moment. So these are the seats, and I'm not going to glue these again until they're located properly. And then the legs come down. I guess they're footrests. So we'll just have a close-in look at that. So the seats with the footrests on there. We have a piece of brass here, some turned brass that goes along the front. It's a bar of some sort that goes along the front of the director. Let's see if we can get that in. And then that sits on top of the pedestal. And this is the sight which we need to bend. Right, so that's the sight on. I think we can put this whole unit onto the pedestal now. I just want to orientate it properly. So it looks like the middle seat goes under that bar. I'm glad I've only got one of these to build, because they're pretty involved, to say the least. The little platform fits on a ring, or has a ring on it, that just in theory fits over the base of the director. Right, so after a lot of fiddling around, that's the Mark II director done. Just try and get a better view of that. Okay, so I think we'll call that one done. I'm glad I didn't have to make 3 of those. Guess I've managed to screw up at least 2 sets of parts, so fortunately I've got the 3rd one out okay. So having finished the searchlights and the Mark II HACs, I can do a little bit more work on the aft defence position here. So I've sprayed the deck in German grey, which is a Tamiya colour, and I just want to use some of my grey mix to go back in and repaint the shields around the edge here. So this paint that I'm using is the stuff that I use to spray with, so it's pretty thin, and it will need a couple of coats to get this colour right. While I've got the grey, I'll just paint that hatch. I'll let that dry, and it'll probably need another coat. Well, it definitely will need another coat. And because I think I've mentioned before, when we're brush painting, it does give a glossier finish than the spray. So I'll give this whole area a coat of matte varnish just to equalise the tone or the sheen on the part. So that shield's had a couple of coats, I'm happy enough with that. It just needs a tiny touch up along the top with the airbrush, and I'll do that next time I load the airbrush up with some paint. So I've just painted in the cable reel here at the back, and I just want to pick out the fog light as well. This lacquer paint is really good, it's called Sparkling Silver. And it just gives the effect of a lamp lens in there. I'm just going to glaze the windows at the top with some crystal clear. It's a bit like we did on the compass platform. When I'm doing these windows, I just do them one at a time and let them dry. And that's because if you try and do them all at once, the next lot of crystal clear that you put in just pulls the other out. So we just leave it. The door windows here are going to need some acetate. They won't take crystal clear. It's too big a gap. Okay, we'll take a look at the bandstand now. This is the after pom pom bandstand, and this is the trumpeter part, obviously, and we have a bit of work to do with the braces underneath. They've got to be removed. These mouldings inside will have to be removed to allow the new floor to go in. And all this underneath obviously is replaced with etch brass, so the new brackets and so on. So the first job is to clean up the part. And unfortunately, for some reason, my little drill has stopped working, so I'm going to have to check that out. In the meantime, I've got to use this Dremel, and I don't really like using it. It's too cumbersome really for work like this. So just make sure that fits now. That's okay. I'll just go around and clean up the bulkhead here around the side, just to make sure that's nice and smoothed out. So this is the underside panel from Pontos. Which should slide down. Might need a little bit of jiggling around. That's okay. So you can see there the locations for all the new brass ribs underneath and the new support pillars. So we want these parts 27. And like a lot of these Pontos turned brass, there's more than one part on what appears to be one part. So for example, in this case we've got the support pillar that we want for this assembly, but it's also got one of the gas tanks for the pom-poms. So we've got to save those. So be careful not to lose them. But I can just drill out the hole a little bit with probably a 0.3 drill. We'll just drill these out and just see if we can get a decent contact with them. just have to be careful not to go through the plastic, although I don't think it would matter that much. I think that's probably going to be okay. Yeah, I think that's we'll give it a go anyway. I was considering getting the solder out for this, but I won't. It's going to go straight on the ship, so it's not going to be subject to a lot of messing around. So I'll glue the underside piece in place. I'm not bothered about glue coming out of the sides there, because I'll be just sanding that anyway, just to make sure that it's all nice and flush. It's slightly proud here and there, but we'll just get rid of that with a few swipes of the sanding stick. Okay, I can put the brackets on now. So we'll start with these at the front. So this is medium super glue. And once the parts are in place and set up a little bit, I can go back in with some super thin and just bond them to the plastic bulkhead. I'll do that all at the end once I've finished fitting all these brackets. I'm going to do the rest all singly because they're all numbered individually, so I'm assuming there's just a slight difference between each one. Okay, so all those brackets are in. I can reinforce them now. Just make sure they're all lined up. I'll knock that one. So just make sure they're all where we want them. It's quite a bit better than the solid Trumpeter plastic braces. So the last three of the support pieces now. You just need to be careful with this one, 589. It is asymmetrical, so it's slightly longer on the right than it is on the left, and it's got some engravings to butt up to the two strips that we've just put in. I'm going to leave the pillars off for the moment while I do the top side. You can see the underside braces are all in now, and that's quite nice and solid. I'll glue the floor in on the top side. The platform has a number of braces to support the shield around the side. These are pretty small, not really looking forward to those, especially when we're going to have to clean every one. Where they have tiny little fret stub on the bottom, and if we leave it, the part won't go in properly. So I'll just work my way around the platform and then we'll see what it's like when we've done that. So I've been all the way around the shield and put the shield supports in. There are 21 of them, and I must say it wasn't the most exciting half hour of my life, but they're in now. I've also fitted the support pillars around the side, the 5, and they're a bit awkward to get straight before you put them on the model, so you get them somewhere near, and then I'll just adjust them when we come to fit the bandstand onto the ship. This strip around the outside of the shield here, I'm not sure what it was really, whether or not it was I can't see why it would be a railing. It looks a bit like the degaussing coil, but obviously it's not that. There's also something similar on the rear screens, so I don't know what they are, whether or not it's some sort of railing that just held some sort of canvas screening or something like that. I've no idea what it was. But you'll notice that it doesn't go all the way to the back of the shield, and I just picked that up in time. I was about to start gluing it at the back and following it round. Obviously I'd have been a long way short, so I just found the centre of the strip and just located it in the centre of the shield at the front, and then obviously wrapping it round the sides gave me the same distance. So don't be tricked into thinking that that's starting at the back, because it doesn't. So I can go ahead and prime and paint the bandstand now. It needs a couple of ammunition boxes, and there's a hoist rig at the back here that needs to be fitted, but I'll do that after I've done the main painting of the part. So that's turned out pretty well. The supports are a bit tedious really, but you just have to knuckle down and do them, and I'm sure they improve the overall look of the bandstand. I can fit the HACs director now for the after defence position. I'm not actually going to glue the director onto its pedestal for the minute, because I just want to paint a white band around the back, which these HACs did have on Hood. So I'll catch up with that a bit later on, but I'll just glue this base in place first. director sits on top there. Let's put this Pom Pom director in now. This is the Mark II, which goes on the back. It just needs a little hole drilling. I'm not convinced about these searchlights just standing on these discs. They appear to me to sit far too low down in the platform. So I'm going to leave those off for the moment, just until I've managed to establish whether or not that's correct. Trumpeter provide a little stand for the searchlights to fit on, so that might be what I'm going to have to do. They just don't look right in the current state. One last tiny detail, I just want to pick out the seats on the Pom Pom director. One last thing I want to do on this Pom Pom director is just paint in the seats. Just use a bit of Tamiya's NATO black. To do that. And while I've got that out, I'll also paint the binoculars on the HACs director. So there we are, I'm happy with that. I have to build a couple of flag lockers which go at the sides here, and some davits or hoists for the pedestals here, but we can pick that up a bit later. Okay, back to the model now, and I've fitted the after control position or the after defense position in place, having fitted these detail parts. I've just got a pair of flag lockers to fit, and I just need to resolve this problem that I think we've got with these searchlight platforms. So I'll just do a bit more research and get the searchlights either amended or fitted over the next week. The Pom Pom bandstand's only temporarily in place. The reason I haven't glued it down is because there are some hatches and boxes to fit underneath the platform, so I'll do those first before gluing the Pom Pom bandstand into place. I've also fitted the aft funnel base and done the detailing on there, so I've put the winches on. The stacks of Carly rafts are all done, they just need the oars fitting inside them. And the MF-DF room, the radio room, is also in place now. I've had the confidence to fit that now because the cover that I'm making for the ship is nearly finished. It'll be done this weekend, so there'll be less danger of that getting damaged now. The other thing I've done is added some little screens to the sides of the funnel bases, and they were made out of canvas, and they were just there to hold in stocks of timber that were stored along the sides of the funnels. So I'm going to replicate that. I'm going to use some plastic strip stock to make up some various sizes of timber to load onto the sides of the funnel bases. I think that'll just add a nice detail to that area. Okay, so I think that's enough for this particular video. We've got done most of what I set out to do this week, but the construction of the cover has taken 2 or 3 days out of this week already. But I just need to get that done in order to protect the model from now on. I didn't have time this week to do the big vents that are in the middle of the shelter deck here, but we'll tackle those next week. So that's it for 17. In 18 I'll be continuing with the work on the shelter deck detailing, so I'll pick up the vents that I missed this week, that I didn't have time for this week. Hopefully get the pom-pom bandstand fitted into place, and I'll get the boxes and hatches that go underneath that finished as well, so that I can get the bandstand glued down. And that'll be coming up on Friday as usual. And because I've been doing the work on the temporary cover, I'll just put together a short video for midweek next week as well, before Friday, just to show how I've gone about that cover, and I'll give you the dimensions that I've used to build that as well. So that'll be coming up as a supplementary video, probably Monday or Tuesday next week. So have a good week, stay safe everybody, and I hope to see you next Friday. Bye for now.